Welcome back to Movie and Recap. In today's video, we will be going through an action drama film entitled Sicario, Day of the Soldado. There will be spoilers ahead, chill out and enjoy. The movie begins with four men entering a grocery store in Kansas City. They suddenly bomb the whole place that kills 15 people, including them, as they enter. Afterward, a woman approaches a child to escape, but she suddenly sees a man praying in Arabic on the door entrance and mercilessly activates the last bomb to explode. In response, the Secretary of Defense, James Ridley, makes his speech through the media television to threaten the terrorists who murdered the 15 innocent people at the grocery store. He says that bombs empower them to send something truly terrifying, which is the total weight of the United States military. Later at night, the US military invades the Gulf of Somalia. Then, upon their arrival, they silently snipe the men on guard and capture Bashar inside their camp. The following day, CIA officer Matt Graver arrives at the camp. As he walks, he directly enters the room to interrogate Bashar. Afterward, he begins asking some questions to Bashar, and if he refuses to answer, Graver will call in an airstrike at his house. Bashar then reveals that Yemeni are the terrorists who bombed the grocery store, so Graver asks how they got to Mexico. Unfortunately, Bashar refuses to speak as Graver exposes him that he's the one who let the terrorist ship enter the US-Mexico border. So, Graver calls his men to put an airstrike at his house. Meanwhile, Hector recruits Miguel as a coyote in Matamoros cartel. Later, Graver goes to Washington to meet the Department of Defense officers. James orders him to apply extreme measures to combat Mexican drug cartels suspected of having smuggled the terrorists across the US-Mexico border as he enters the office. Because by next week, the president is adding drug cartels to the list of terrorist organizations. So, Graver and the Department of Defense decide the best option is to instigate a war between the major cartels. James then says that he doesn't need to remind Graver what happens if he fails. After a while, Graver meets with PMC official Andy Weldon to secure mercenaries, helicopters, and military-grade communication equipment for the US to maintain plausible deniability while combating the Mexican cartels. At first, Andy hesitates to give what Graver wants until Graver reveals his mission. Fortunately, Andy agrees to deal with Graver. Later at night, Graver visits operative Alejandro Gillick's house to recruit him for the mission. Graver then says that it's Gillick's chance to get even for his family as Carlos mercilessly killed them. And this time, Graver says that there are no rules for Gillick anymore. The following day, Gillick assassinates a high-profile lawyer of the Matamoros cartel in Mexico City. At the same time, Graver and his team capture Isabel Reyes, the daughter of the kingpin of Matamoros's rival, Carlos Reyes, in a false flag operation. As they get Isabel out of the car, Graver's team tells Isabella's guard to inform Carlos. Afterward, Graver, Gillick, and their team take Isabel to a safe house in Texas. Then, Graver enters the military base to ensure that the guard informs Carlos about his daughter using the satellite. Luckily, they finally have a track on Carlos. Meanwhile, Gillick's man locks Isabella up in the bathroom at the safe house. Then Gillick signals the incoming DEA to begin setting up a raiding stage as they pretend to rescue Isabella, making her believe that the Matamoros cartel had captured her. Afterward, Gillick takes her to an American military base while the team organizes her to Mexico. As they reach the military base, Gillick interrogates Isabella and tells her they will need to work through some things to understand her abduction circumstances. Afterward, Gillick leaves the room. Later, Gillick and Alejandrino meet with Rafael and talk about their plan to leave Isabella behind in a Mexican federal police depot located inside a territory controlled by her father's rivals to escalate the inter-cartel conflict further. Then, Rafael asks Gillick what he will say about finding her. So Gillick answers that they raided a safe house in Brownsville and found her there. Upon their agreement, Rafael informs Gillick that the federal police will meet them at the border with an escort. Meanwhile, Hector introduces Miguel to Gallo, a human trafficker. Gallo then trusts Miguel to make the border crossing to earn huge money. Smiling, Miguel deals with Gallo's offer. On the other hand, Gillick visits Isabella's room to tell her that they'll turn her over to the Mexican army and arrange to take her back to her father. Afterward, Graver prepares the gears and wears personal protective equipment along with Isabella. While Graver and his team drive across the border, Graver radios the police escort to check the perimeter. Luckily, the police escort informs that there are no vehicles other than them. Meaning, it's clear, and the Mexico feds keep their word that the road would be clear. However, after crossing into Mexico, the corrupt police escort suddenly turns against them and attacks the American armored vehicles. Graver and his team kill 25 Mexican police officers to escape the ambush in the firefight that ensues. Amidst the chaos, Isabel takes the opportunity to run away into the desert as Gillick and Graver leave her in the armored vehicle to fight with the Mexican police officers. Then, after having a ceasefire, Graver and his team spread out to surround the Mexican police officers. However, a Mexican police officer shoots Steve Forcing, so Graver and the team kill them. Afterward, Graver receives information that the police vehicles are approaching south. So, he orders his crew to load up. Unfortunately, as they go back to the vehicle, Isabel is gone. Graver then shouts to call for a new mission, but Gillick stops him. He says that Graver continues to go head north as he finds her. Fortunately, Graver agrees and talks with the team. Now, Gillick goes after Isabel alone while the rest of the team returns to the United States. But before Gillick leaves, Graver gives him something and tells him that Gillick should send a signal when he gets to the border so that they will come and get him. Meanwhile, Isabella calls for help as she sees a moving vehicle in the desert. As the car stops, a man suddenly tries to kidnap her, but Gillick immediately snipes him. Gillick then gets Isabella inside the car and drives. While driving, Isabella asks again who kidnapped her, so Gillick reveals the truth about his father. On the other hand, Graver talks to Steve regarding his wounds when suddenly Cynthia appears and excuses Graver to speak with her. Afterward, Graver informs Cynthia that Isabel is with his source right now and that she'll be back in an hour. But Cynthia talks about the footage of dead Mexican police on Fox News. As Graver tries to tell the truth about the Mexican police officers who work for reassess, Cynthia, on the other hand, says that they are starting a war with the Mexican cartels, not with the Mexican government. Unfortunately, the American government determined that at least 2 of the suicide bombers in Kansas City were domestic terrorists, not foreign nationals, thus not smuggled into the United States by the cartels. Later, Graver discusses with Secretary of Defense James Ridley about the mission. James then asks about Isabella's whereabouts. He also asks about the 25 Mexican police officers Graver killed and confirms if Isabella witnessed it. So, Graver says that Isabella only saw the corrupt police escort that attacked them and that his source, Gillick, is bringing her to the border. James then asks again about the exact location. Then without hesitation, Steve says they don't know their whereabouts, but Gillick has a beacon and that he'll activate it as soon as he gets close to the border. So, to quell the tensions with Mexico, the Secretary of Defense James Ridley orders Graver to abandon the mission. Then, after learning that Isabel witnessed the Americans shooting the Mexican police, James commands Graver and the team to erase all proof of American involvement by killing Isabel and Gillick. Later, Gillick calls Graver to inform him that he's already with Isabel. Then Graver warns Gillick that the US government wants him to cut ties and needs to get rid of Isabel, but Gillick refuses and says that Graver should help him get across the border to decide what to do with her. However, Graver refuses to grant his wish. Luckily, Isabel and Gillick have found a shelter at an isolated farm in the desert and let them stay for the night. Meanwhile, Hector teaches Miguel about the mission. As Miguel and the gang walk across the river, they suddenly see a helicopter approaching towards them, so they hide immediately. Afterward, they reach the road while Miguel enters a woman's car to get the money. Then he orders her to get him to the grocery store on Trenton. Meanwhile, Isabel walks toward Gillick, digging a few resources in the backyard, and asks him about learning sign language. So, Gillick says that his daughter was deaf, and then Isabella says she knows him and that he's an attorney whose family got killed by her father. Later, Gillick teaches Isabel to practice her new name and information to disguise. Because Gillick knows if they stay in Mexico, somebody will kill Isabel. So, with few resources he gets from digging in the backyard, they disguise themselves as illegal immigrants and pay human traffickers to help them re-enter the United States. While heading to the border, Gillick embeds a transmitter into Isabel's shoe. Upon their arrival, Gillick and Isabel walk towards the border and wait for Hector to help them re-enter the United States. Then later, when Hector arrives, he informs Gillick that children go on a different bus, but Gillick refuses and gives Hector $1,000 for payment to avoid separation with Isabel. Meanwhile, Graver and his team fly covertly into Mexico on Black Hawks, tracking a GPS device that Gillick has activated and embedded into Isabel's shoe. Miguel, a young Mexican-American recruited as a coyote at the point of departure for the border, recognizes Gillick from an encounter in a Texas parking lot 2 days earlier. So, he alerts Hector about it, and without hesitation, Hector immediately takes Gillick and Isabel on the blue bus, making them hostage. Meanwhile, Graver tracks the bus on the road where Gillick and Isabel are inside and confirms to his pilot if the vehicle is unmarked or police. On the other hand, Hector and his gang release their gun after Hector stops the vehicle on the road. Then Hector orders everyone inside to get out of the bus except for Gillick and Isabel. Afterward, Hector calls Gallo and Miguel to go inside the bus. As Miguel enters, Hector asks him if Gillick is the man he saw in Texas a couple of days ago, but Miguel remains silent. So, Gallo interrogates Gillick, but then he suddenly sees Isabel. Gallo then commands his men to take Isabel to his truck. Afterward, Gallo continues to speak with Gillick. While Gallo listens, Gillick tells him that if he harms the girl, they will be starting a new war that he can't back out of. Then offers a deal to make a phone call and ensure the safety of everyone, but Gallo refuses to agree. Then, Gallo goes to Isabel and says Gillick tells him that he's working for his dad. Unconscious of what's happening, Isabel unintentionally nods. Gallo then returns to the bus and orders his men to cover his whole face and tape his mouth. After, Gallo calls Jose to shoot Gillick, but Jose refuses. So, Gallo takes the gun from him and kills Jose in the head. Afterward, Gallo approaches Miguel and gives him the gun. Hector tries to stop Gallo, but then Miguel immediately takes it. Miguel then shoots a hooded Gillick in the head. Then, Graver, on the other hand, witnesses the apparent killing of Gillick through live satellite imaging. As Graver can't take his eyes off the satellite, Steve still waits for a few seconds for his response. Afterward, Graver returns to his consciousness and orders his team to track down and eliminate the Mexican gang, rescuing Isabel. Upset by his actions, Miguel abandons the gang and walks off himself. Meanwhile, Gillick regains consciousness and discovers he's shot through the cheek. Then, fortunately, Graver and his team eliminate the Mexican gang. And instead of killing Isabel according to his orders, Graver decides to bring Isabel back to the US and place her in witness protection. Going back to Gillick, he successfully cut the ties on his hands and found a vehicle on the road. As he drives, a gang search party suddenly chases him, but he kills its members by throwing a grenade into the pursuing car. The movie ends with a heavily gang-tattooed Miguel walking in the Texas mall where he first saw Gillick. And as he enters the office of his gang contact, Miguel suddenly finds Gillick waiting for him inside. Afterward, Miguel saunters and sits in front of Gillick. Gillick then says to an inscrutable Miguel, "So, you want to be a sicario? Let's talk about your future," and then closes the door. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more videos like this and to help the channel grow.